So as was mentioned, the Counter-Extremism Project has been working on anti-Semitism for a long time. We're currently in the middle of a couple of projects, but what we're also doing since a long time is focusing on key actors. And this is independent of any phenomenon. This might be Islamist, jihadist, left-wing, right-wing. We are interested in understanding strategies and networks, the movers and shakers, the generals, the entrepreneurs, the merchants of extremism and terrorism. And this is also our approach towards anti-Semitism. So there's a lot of great organizations who monitor all kinds of events, incidents, and our focus is, on the other hand, mostly on understanding who is behind a significant part of the action, be that online or offline. Now, as mentioned, we are involved in two fascinating projects. The EU Tomcat, we're building a threat observatory for monitoring and countering anti-Semitism and anti-Gypsyism, EU funded, with colleagues from the Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, and Slovakia. The Auschwitz Museum and Foundation is part of that project, and we are currently putting together a transnational study on the role of anti-Semitism in the mobilization towards violence, which was funded by the German Federal Foreign Office, again, in a couple of different countries. So we're very excited about these projects. And of course, the topic is as timely as it can get. And I will talk about, of course, our summary, our recommendation that is also already being included in some of the work that we're doing. Anti-Semitism after 7 October, this is my focus. In preparation of different projects, I talked to different colleagues, experts, researchers in the mentioned countries and asked them, so who is organizing, for example, demonstrations in the different countries that can be considered pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel, or anti-Semitic. And there was a brighter variation, actually, who was responsible. The same for online activities. So it was difficult to come up with a clear pattern of who is behind activities that can be considered anti-Semitic from Austria to Sweden. There are relevant differences, and as we have just discussed, for some, or maybe even in general, it can be difficult to determine if a statement or narrative is indeed anti-Semitic. And I will talk about this, maybe how to approach this from one angle. What was interesting and concerning is, of course, the collaborations between Islamist groups and extreme left groups. These could be anti-imperialist or Trotskyist groups that interestingly popped up in all of the countries. So the extreme left seems to be a key actor since October 7 in organizing anti-Israel or anti-Semitic activities online and offline. The collaboration with Islamists, which they disagree and agree on different things, could probably be summed up as the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Here we see a hammer and sickle flag next to Palestinian flags in the center of Berlin. And this has been happening to some degree in all of the countries that are mentioned here. Now, the enemy of my enemy can be my friend or can remain my enemy. In the extreme right, the milieus are divided in their reaction to October 7. Some follow a similar approach. Here, our colleague Jacek Purski, who's also in the webinar and is with us in the EU, in the Tomcat project and in the other project for the Foreign Office, sent me a picture of this sticker from Krakow that basically reads, "Nationalists with Arabs will not kneel in front of Jews." Right? So this was in February this year. This is obviously a far-right extreme group, the Falanga, that is here positioning itself with Palestinians against Jews. And we have the German micro party, tiny party, the Third Way, who has been positioning themselves for a long time here, basically stating Israel is our downfall. So here we have the enemy of my enemy is my friend, but many other groups have not really positioned themselves out loud and probably still see this as a more of a strategic opportunity to not speak out, because most extreme right groups obviously are anti-Semitic, anti-Arab, and anti-Islam. So just to show you that there is some diversity within this spectrum. Now, when we look at the, for example, big demonstrations that took place after October 7, some were to commemorate the victims of the terrorist attack by Hamas, but a lot of them, of course, were supporting the Palestinian cause. My feeling was that there's a lot of like muddy waters. How many of the participants in a demonstration were actually anti-Semites? How many people who shared something online were actually anti-Semites? And it can be really challenging to differentiate, is the narrative anti-Semitic or not, or the slogan that is being shared? And is the person that is maybe joining a demonstration and walking behind a sign that is anti-Semitic, are they automatically also anti-Semitic? Do they have the knowledge we have? Is everyone who is involved in this activity here that has been in our face basically since October 8, 9, 10 ongoing, are they all anti-Semites if they are involved in activities that can be considered anti-Semitic? And this would be an example that I looked at. So first of all, the criticism of the IRA definition that is from universities, for example. I mean, Alex just talked about this. I really have a hard time understanding, because it is an essential part of the definition of IRA, of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, that criticism of Israel, if it is similar to how other countries are criticized, cannot be regarded as anti-Semitic. So I think this is actually a very helpful and a very clear definition, and that everyone who speaks out against it should bring up some better arguments, in my understanding. There's always room to discuss, and no definition is perfect, but this is explicitly in the definition. So I've been meeting colleagues that said, no, there's no clear distinction, and I think the distinction here is pretty clear. Now, looking at a specific theme and narrative that we've heard and are hearing, free Palestine. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And those of you who have looked at the IRA definition might know that they are working examples. So it's not just a couple of sentences. They give concrete examples what could constitute anti-Semitism. So from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Is this denying the right of the Jewish people for self-determination? Is this calling for genocide, for example? This is one way to understand it. And in some situations, this is, I think, the right way to understand it. However, other people who might come from a more pro-Palestine perspective argue that this slogan means the need for equality for all inhabitants of historic Palestine. Right? So obviously there is a stretch here, but it's not as black and white, in some cases at least, as we sometimes think. And this is why we came up at CEP trying to develop this guide to help understand how to make informed decisions in what context a specific slogan is most likely considered to be considered anti-Semitic, without going into scholarly discussions which should take place, of course, but are not helping policymakers to make well-informed decisions. For example, here, this is a German network, and what you see here in the background are these motor gliders that were used by some Hamas terrorists to cross the border into Israel, especially those who then murdered and butchered the participants of this music, this peace festival. Some of those arrived in these gliders. Now, this is a post from October 8, right? So obviously here, and you can see that statement here, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. So here it's obvious in my understanding that this does not mean the equal, peaceful coexistence of everyone in historic Palestine, but this is a call for terrorism and violence. So this group would be an actor to look into. And of course, this is a picture from Great Britain where some demonstrators at a pro-Palestine demonstration actually printed out the motor gliders and attached them to their jackets in solidarity with these attackers. So here is obvious there is a difference between people saying maybe the same slogan and meaning specific things, and in some incidents even different things. So the muddy waters, because it can be different to assess if an individual that is associated with a demonstration or with a post on social media, because it can be difficult, and because some of the demonstrations and the demands, of course, are completely legitimate, calling for a stop of the war, a ceasefire, considering better help for the affected people in Gaza, and so on. All the concerns related to human rights. They cannot automatically, it's not smart, it's also probably wrong to put everyone here in one basket and label them anti-Semites. We have to do the work to differentiate between different motivations. So how can we as researchers or policymakers differentiate between all the noise that is out there and some of the signal which would be clear indicators in this context? An obvious case is the Samidun network of the PFLP, a terrorist organization that was handing out sweets on October 7. This is a picture from Berlin, right? So where's the discussion here? There cannot be a discussion. These people are celebrating a terrorist attack on October 7. And of course, the German government picked up on this, and these are two ban orders. The organizations, Hamas was on the EU terrorist list already, but there was no ban order for their operations in Germany, which happened after that, and the Samidun network was also banned. So this is a kind of clear-cut case. Again, an organization exposes itself in celebrating terrorism while there wasn't even a response by Israel. This is also what Katharina von Schnurbein mentioned in the beginning, which we discussed a while ago as an indicator that I recommended. So how to disrupt now these anti-Semitic actors? Some of them are easily to identify, some it's a bit more complicated. We recommend that we start with a risk assessment. Risk assessment, a risk-based approach, because anti-Semitism comes in different manifestations and it comes in different threats. So a school might come with a different risk analysis after their internal risk assessment conducted by the people there that are responsible for security, compared to, for example, a security service, an agency that does a risk assessment, maybe protecting a synagogue or in general looking into terrorism threats in this context. So a rigorous process of really understanding where our weaknesses, what are previous risks towards Jews in our area of responsibility, and who are actors who might instigate violence, for example, if violence is here the main threat. This is definitely that we recommend people should do. And the details, some recommendations on how to do that are in the guide. We focus on the anti-Semitic actors, key actors, meaning experienced long-term individuals and groups, because as part of the research, we've heard from colleagues and also in our own research that there's a lot of familiar faces, right? Familiar faces everywhere. So this is not a sudden uprise of hundreds of thousands of people out of nowhere. There's people that organize demonstrations, that organize the online, that organize the funding, the logistics and all. So it is in our recommendation very important and probably smart to start by looking at the people who have organized events, activities during October 7 and 8, while Israel was still fighting terrorists in Israel. So there can be no confusion with maybe the air campaign or the invasion into Gaza later, where you can at least have a discussion what is going on. But those who were acting already on October 7 and 8, we would consider as key actors. And then you would start exploring the network. So who was involved in that activity that these key actors were conducting, for example? Who was co-organizing a demonstration, for example? How do these organizations connect to each other? Online, it's the same thing. Who was sharing content celebrating activities, terrorist attacks, terrorist-related activities, Free Palestine slogans on October 7 and 8. So instead of getting lost in the complexity of many people that are involved in activities for many reasons, we, like we do with all phenomena, recommend identifying key actors, their strategies, and then try to disrupt them. And here, of course, is another indicator, the triangles that have been used by Hamas to mark Jewish targets on during their attack on October 7 have also popped up in different places for marking individuals, be they Jewish or be they pro-Jewish, which is the case in the lower picture, right? So we have to consider this as a good indicator. And also, if we do this, if we follow these key actors and if we follow these symbols, we reduce the risk of conflating people with legitimate concerns who might not have the education or in terms of information we have with those who are actually outspoken, hostile, and violent anti-Semites. And this is just a summary of how the guide looks like with different steps. As I said, rank the risk, focus on the timeline, those who were pro-Palestinian and anti-Israeli on October 7 and 8 are definitely the starting point of such a network analysis. Look at symbols and means that are supportive of violence, follow those who share them, follow those who put them online and offline, come up with a strategy on how to analyze and disrupt these key actors, and what we always do at CEP, as you know, follow the money. There is funding. There might be public money that some of these groups are receiving. There might be illegal forms of money they are receiving. To really disrupt a network, you have also to go after the money. And as I said, this is all in the guide, and we will resend the link to the guide after the webinar. Thank you.